The final school bell rang, and the students of Ashton Middle School all exited through the iron gates, on bikes, on scooters, on foot, on skates, and some took the bus or were picked up by parents, except for Kaden in his math class. Mr. Drone made sure that all of them ran 10 laps around the soccer field before going home. After that, Kaden and Kazen put on their skates to skate home. "Let me know if you change your mind about the studying," said Kazen. "I'll be sure not to. See you tomorrow," said Kaden. "See you," said Kazen, a bit hurt. They parted ways. Kaden skated a bit slowly on his way home. He did like seeing his father, but he always felt like there was something that he was not telling him. Also, Kaden often wondered why he looked so different from his parents. "Maybe we'll talk for real this time," thought Kaden to himself. Kaden was so lost in thought, he did not notice the strange people in cloaks that were watching him as he skated home. He did not notice that the moon was coming out early. He did not notice that the air smelled strongly of a chemical. As he reached an alleyway, out stepped Clifton and a couple of his cronies. "Remember what we talked about?" asked Clifton, as he grabbed Kaden by the collar and dragged him into the alley. He then flung Kaden against a wall. "Okay, first question. Whose table was that?" asked Clifton. "The school's," said Kaden. "Wrong answer," said Clifton, as he launched a strong punch into Kaden's stomach. "Gah!" said Kaden, as he staggered backward and fell to his knees. "Next question. Who's got the most men, you or me?" "I'm not scared of you, Clifton." "Wrong answer," shouted Clifton, and kicked Kaden in the face. Kaden fell on the ground, and blood ran from his nose. He got up and ran at Clifton with a clenched fist. Clifton caught his fist and handed him to his cronies, who held him in place. "Guess you got hit by a car today," said Clifton, as he cracked his fists. "Muh, is all Kaden could get out. Tears ran down his cheek. "This one is gonna hurt even more," said Clifton, as he wound up for another punch. However, something interesting happened. The necklace that Kaden always wore, the necklace with the Emerald K, began to get warm. It began to glow. Kaden's eyes also began to glow. Shards of light came from his eyes and chest, shards of green light. "What the heck? You really are a freak!" shouted Clifton. His cronies were blown away from Kaden by a shockwave, and Kaden hovered in the air. He pointed his open hand at Clifton and spoke words that were not necessarily his own. "You shall not harm this vessel," said Kaden. "Who the heck are you?" shouted a terrified Clifton, who backed against the opposite wall. "You need not know. However, for the sake of your pitiful planet, this vessel is needed." There was a flash of light, and Clifton passed out along with his two cronies. Kaden landed on the ground gently and skated out of the alley. Light still streamed from his eyes and chest, but gradually dissipated and eventually vanished. "I feel tired," said Kaden. "You should." The voice came from a cloaked figure who was about his size. The cloaked figure continued. "However, more testing is needed before your power completely sleeps." The cloaked figure held out a hand, and a ball of liquid formed at its palm. The liquid was a lime green color and bubbled. It looked acidic. It had a strong chemical smell. "Deflect this if you can," said the figure. They launched a ball of acid at Kaden. Out of reflex, Kaden reached out his own hand, and just as the ball of acid touched it, there was a blaze of emerald green light that erupted from his hand and moved down his arm and across the rest of his body. Suddenly, he was not wearing his skates or his school uniform. Instead, he was wearing a green uniform with a black stripe running down the middle, with long sleeves and long pants. He also had gloves and boots and a small cape that ran from his shoulders to his waist. But right now, it was blowing in the wind. "Impossible!" shouted the cloaked figure. "How could you have awakened so soon?" "What's going on?" shouted Kaden. "What am I wearing?" "The enemies have come from afar," shouted someone from the top of the roof. He jumped down next to Kaden. He was wearing a similar outfit to Kaden's, except that it was gold with a black stripe. "Envious!" shouted the cloaked figure. "Do you have to do with this? I was not informed of this by my master. I will return to him at once." "No," said Envious. "You'll end here." This figure, called Envious, formed a bow and arrow of golden light and drew the arrow back to fire. "Enemy from afar! In the name of Kadabra, I finish you! Envious arrow!" The arrow flies, but the cloaked figure vanishes. "Darn!" shouted Envious. He quickly caused the arrow to disappear harmlessly with a wave of his hand. Kaden took a knee on the ground. He was even more exhausted now. He looked up at this figure called Envious and noticed that his hair was a similar color to his own, but he looked a bit older. "You," said Kaden. "Now is not the time for you to know anything. For now I'll erase your memory until the true battle unfolds." Kaden blinked out.